Hi, my name is Leighton Jen. I'm Director of Development for the American Documentary and Animation Film Festival, also known as AmDocs. We got a very special guest here, Michelle Fenn. She has this great documentary. Can you give me the title of your film again, Michelle?
Yes, Beyond the Herd.
And this is about wild mustangs, correct?
Yeah, so it's about two Mexican American wild horse trainers. So they domesticate and train the wild horses that they pick out and that they rescue and that come to them, and their kinship and just shared often discrimination that they feel in the equestrian world. And a lot of times Mustangs are stereotyped and yeah, and looked down upon as well just for being not papered and bred and all that stuff. That's very important in the horse world.
It's very different in the car world when you talk about mustangs, but
Yes, yeah, definitely not the same. Horsepower, right? The horsepower is the
that's
same, yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
How did you come across your two subjects? When did you meet, and when did it hit the light? When the light clicked that, hey, this would be a great documentary.
Yeah, so I've been riding horses since I was six, but I don't come from money and I don't come from a horse family. I was like the only one in my family that was interested in horses and wanted to ride. So I always felt like a little bit of an outsider, especially growing up in New England, where there's a lot of money and a lot of expensive barns and places to ride at. And I bounced around from barn to barn as a kid because I could never own, and I had to muck stalls to pay for lots of lessons and those things. So it always felt like a little bit out of reach, I think, for me, like as a hobby, as a lifestyle, to be involved with horses. And then with that being said, yeah, I stopped writing once I got more into theater and sports and carried that on through college. And then, as a young filmmaker, when you're just starting out, it's not like you have buckets of cash around to go ride horses and all that stuff. So to kind of fill that gap when I wasn't able to ride, I followed trainers on social media. Just kind of kept as much as I could in the horse world from just watching people. And I came across Amber and Isidro's training page and thought they were doing a really cool job with Mustangs. I really liked their style and how they worked with wild horses. And then one day I saw a post that Amber wrote on Facebook, and she was talking about an experience that she had with a hauler. So it's a person who moves horses from one location to another. And the person who showed up to move the horses was being just really rude to Isidro, treating him like the groom instead of the head trainer that he is, primarily just based on his accent, how he looks, and a lot of stereotypes that go on with Mexican Americans in the horse industry. So she made this big long Facebook post about it and how, discouraging this was to her, and this was something that, was not new to them, was not a new experience. Obviously it's not my lived experience, but as somebody who, is involved in the horse world and has felt, out of place, out of touch at times, it still resonated with me on other levels, and it seemed like a an opportunity to give a platform for someone else to talk about, what was important to them. So I reached out to Amber. We hadn't really met before or anything, I don't think. And I just DM'd her and I said, hey, I'm a filmmaker. I'm looking to direct my first documentary. I've produced a bunch of documentaries and other content, but looking to direct something of my own. Would you be willing to talk with me and share your story? Yeah, and it just kind of grew from there. We had a couple of Zoom interviews, and I knew that there was a story there. She compared her experience and her reasoning for, working with wild Mustangs. She says it in the film where she says, I think my fight for Mustangs is my fight for myself. And hearing that and just the kinship that the two of them shared, for Wild Mustangs, it was an angle and a point of view that hasn't really been shared as deeply, in filmmaking before. There's a lot of films out there about the plight of wild Mustangs and whether they should be wild or shouldn't be wild, and whether or not people are for the Bureau of Land Management that manages them. Some people are for the practice, some people are against, but this point of view specifically hasn't really been captured in this kind of way. So I thought it was a good story to bring to festivals, and was a way to tell a horse story, but in a universal sense, that other people could relate to, whether or not, they rode horses or, had an interest in horses, just a story about belonging, right? And wanting to carve space for yourself in a place where there isn't often a lot of space.
Well, that's beautiful. I think that's what our festival tries to do is we try to give a platform to people who don't have a platform to tell
Mhm.
and share their stories because a lot of these stories aren't shared. And I think what you did was a beautiful thing. And I saw one of your past interviews. It was a 1 day shoot. Can you talk to me about how you did this 1 day shoot? I would assume you had to do a lot of planning since you had such limited time. Can you talk about the
Yeah.
whole process and how you got what you needed in a day?
Yeah, so I should clarify that we shot 1 day on location, about a half day for the interview. So for about the 80% bulk of it, that was just a full 1 day shoot, where we were on location. I'm sorry, the the monitor in front of me just lit up if I lighting up in blue. Um, yeah, so we shot 1 day on location on their ranch, and then previous to that, I we spent maybe a couple hours, half a day. Really wasn't long. I just captured their interview portion when they were at a horse show in California. So getting their interviews first really kind of helped me establish, okay, what B-roll do I need? What do I need to tell the story? What do I need to capture? It allowed me to almost script it out like I would a scripted project and really storyboard it out so that shooting in 1 day, okay, this is what we need to get in the morning, this is what we need to get in the afternoon, this is what we need to get in the evening. Luckily, the weather cooperated, and Amber and Isidro are just so well spoken and so prepared. For Isidro to be like, oh, I've got a wild Mustang that we haven't touched before, so this is perfect to do in front of camera, and just very casual and calm. It truly was a day in the life for them. Like there wasn't anything that was out of the ordinary that we shot. There wasn't anything that we had to plan ahead of time. It was just like, what does your day to day look like? So it was really easy to just capture that with them. And then grabbing additional sound bites throughout, as more things came up, or if there was something that we captured in the interview that I wanted, Amber to rephrase maybe in a different way, that gave me an opportunity to do it in that day. So yeah, I would say about 80% of it was shot in that 1 day, and then just the interviews on another like half day.
And then, so this is a new world to me. Can you expand on why Mustangs, especially wild Mustangs, are so discriminated against? Because this is
Yeah.
something new to me, and I don't know if I understand it. Can you explain it a little bit further?
Yeah, yeah. So we talk about it briefly in the film. So in the Western world specifically, it's funny if anyone watches Yellowstone, it's a really good comparison because in Yellowstone they talk about like lineage, right? And the breeding of these horses. What have they done? It shows who the dam is, who the sire is, like who where the papers, where they come from, really matters. And so if you think about it in terms of somebody maybe who's immigrated here or isn't from here or something, right? Like where you come from, like that idea, there's a juxtaposition there between the two. So Mustangs are often thought of as like lesser than because they're wild. There's no, you can put a DNA test on them and maybe test some of the breeds that are in them, but it's similar to like a purebred dog versus a mutt. Like I have two, husky pit bull mixes. Like people aren't going to look at them and be like, that's a show dog, right? Like they're mutts. What are they good for? And it's very similar with Mustangs, where like, well, what are they good for? They're just small, tiny little, no nothing horses. When really they're beautiful. There's different sizes. They're all different dispositions, different colors. We've seen Mustangs who excel at dressage, Western pleasure, trail, rainy events, like all sorts of different things that make really great companions. But a lot of times people see in movies and uh, rescue cases where Mustangs come in, they're mishandled from the get-go, and then they're crazy. They're untrainable, right? Like, no, they're worth nothing. They're dog food. Like you can't, they're not workable, they're not trainable, and all this stuff. So that's a lot of the stereotypes that kind of go along with Mustangs. It's similar to like rescue dogs. Rather, you're going to the shelter, like you're just gonna get a problem dog. Like they're not gonna be any good. Like it's the same kind of, elitist attitude, I think, that people have between something that's bred specifically versus something that's a mixture.
Do you see a path where you can expand on this film and explore the topics deeper as well as your two subjects? Because it's really just you've captivated me just our discussion. Is this
Mm.
something you plan to pursue further?
I think we've covered, as far as their story, I think we buttoned it up pretty good for this short. But what I would like to do is expand on the story of cowgirls in general. And I have, something in development at the moment that's more of a doc series that explores the diversity and the history of cowgirling, cowboying is what they say, right? But through the lens of cowgirls. So that's an avenue that I would like to pursue further, and would love to have more of Amber in that, and maybe a little bit splash of Isidro as well, because he's amazing and so captivating. But I think there is an opportunity for more stories to be told for women, kind of in the non-traditional Western sphere of horsemanship.
Now, let's talk a little bit about your career. You
Sure.
said this is your first film that you directed, but you've produced a few. Can you talk
Yeah.
about some of your other projects and what those past experiences, how they informed you in directing your first documentary?
Yeah, so I started as did a little bit of everything out of college, and then really fell into editing for a long time, and narrative editing. So I come from that world, which is just so helpful to have a strong post-production background. Because from there, you either keep doing the editing path, or I took the other path, which was story producing, and then from story producing to post producing to regular producing, because there's just so much as an editor, you're the final rewrite of the script. You really have to understand pacing and narration, and what takes are good, what's captivating, and I think it just translates to so many skills that you take with you as a director and as a producer. So from narrative, editing, moved, like I said, I moved into more post-producing roles. Did a lot of work with feature documentaries as a post producer, story producer, and then the last couple of years, been doing a lot of marketing, commercial. I've directed a series of commercial videos. Done some directing for promotional content for television shows and series. And then I really like working with branded content. I think that's where the future of filmmaking really is headed. And I really like working with brands and telling stories, either, like hard branding or soft branding, just finding ways to connect brands and people. And it's a really great way to find, I think, funding for projects. That's why I say the future of filmmaking, I really think, is branded, because there's ways that brands can get involved in, human interest stories that serves them as well and also gives voices to people. So yeah, so kind of started to dip my toes into that world as well, and still have some narrative projects on the side. I know you're supposed to find a niche as a filmmaker. Like I say that to everybody, but like, storytelling is storytelling to me. I just, if there's a good story narrative or documentary, I'm interested in it.
Now, a lot of it, and forgive me if I misheard you, but a lot of it is started with documentary. That's kind of a core that's led to you. What was it about documentaries that led you down that path? What is it about documentaries that feeds into your strength as a storyteller?
Yeah, yeah. So from narrative editing to story producing and documentary was a really great angle to take. And then really delving into unscripted and documentary. It's so, I think it's really fun to find very authentic stories. There's a lot that you can do in the scripted world, of course. It mirrors life as well, but documentary is, I don't, there's just so much room. There's different ways to tell stories. You can do it without interviewing people and just showing images and evoking emotion. You can get beautiful, almost poetic lines from people that are just natural, right? They're not scripted. They're just some speaking from the heart, that can lead a story. So I think for me, it's the story producing element, like finding the hook, in a story, in a documentary. Like, what is the main message? Like, what makes this story different, unique, meant to be told? Like, that's what's exciting for me, I think, as a filmmaker the most for documentaries.
And I know I'm a little bit of a fan, so we're gonna take a little bit of a left turn, but I warned you about
Sure.
this. You did a little
Yeah,
bit of
yeah.
music, and one of the bands that you focused on was local natives who I caught at Coachella. Can you talk about that experience and working a little bit in the music world and what that experience is like?
Yeah, yeah. So I had the opportunity. I co-directed that piece with the DP and produced it, and it was right as the world was opening up again. After COVID. So it was a kind of like a docu commercial. I was in like a docu commercial music video that we shot for them. That was uh, advertising is not the right word. Promoting. It was promoting their live show that they were having at the Greek, which for them was, the first time they were going to be able to interact with their audience right after we've all been locked down. And it was, I mean, they're amazing to work with. They're super cool guys, really down to earth, game for anything. Hey, can you guys try this? Can you guys try this? Can you talk about this? Yeah, sure, yeah, why not? And let me tell you, them live, like when we, recorded them singing. Um, they're so natural, and it was really cool to put them in the audience of the Greek theater, and their vocals just the way that the theater is shaped and everything, like it was just very like operatic. It almost felt like, like the way that it like feeds back into you, but like after being locked down for so long, I was saying, I was like, wow, this is the first time I've heard live music in like probably 2 years. So there's something really special and cool to be there in person and to have them sing and be so good. Like it's great when you get to work with artists and they're just as good live as they are recorded, and you're like, oh, thank God, like they're real musicians. Yeah, and I mean, it was just acoustic and beautiful and live, and really fun to witness. And they were just really just normal, down to earth people. And I think that's what I like about working with talent as well, where like, they're just humans, like just really talented humans with cool jobs, really.
And then you'll be coming out. I assume you're coming down to Palm Springs. Have you been to Palm Springs before? And what are your thoughts about
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, so I'm based in Los Angeles. So we like to pop up to Palm Springs. I've been there a lot in the winter. I have some friends who their parents have houses up there and whatnot. But I love Palm Springs. It's so relaxing. It's hot for me in the summer. It's a little bit warm. You guys get some like 115, 120 in the summer.
Oh yeah.
It definitely gets up there. But the winter is great. I'm super excited to be there for March. It's going to be perfect weather. It's very, I think for someone who hasn't been there before, it's very relaxing. It's very inviting. It's very warm. The bars are nice. It's just like a nice little escape from Los Angeles, really. It's just time seems to move a little slower, I think.
Quite a bit slower. You
Yeah.
did mention you're based in LA, and
Mhm.
we're trying to plan this interview, and then life happened, and we're talking about the wildfires. Can you
Yeah.
talk a little about your experience with the wildfires, and it kind of feeds into your love of animals because I know you've done a lot to try to help the animals and try to provide shelter for a lot of these animals I mean, it's just sad.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so I'm in North Hollywood, so we weren't like we could see all four fires on all sides of us at one point. That was crazy. And I would always tell people, with my friend, are you okay? Okay, whenever there's a wildfire, I'm like, look, if we're evacuating, like the city is not in a good spot if like like the main city is evacuating. And let me tell you, when the Studio City fire erupted that one night, they put it out in 15 minutes, so it wasn't, ended up not being a big deal. But like seeing that from my house, like literally clear as day. It was shocking. Like it felt like the world was on fire at that point. I'm like, wow, that is the closest I've ever seen a fire come to like the main city part of it. And at one point, when the Palisades fire crept up towards Encino, like at the end of my street, we literally saw flames. Like we could see them. Like I never, I've been in LA for, I don't know, 10 plus years. And anyone who's been here much, much longer can tell you like, that was just unheard of. Just the velocity of it. I thought the fires back in was like 2020, I think it was 2019 when the
Yeah,
right by Brentwood when those fires went up. I thought that was
right.
wild. This was like nothing we'd ever seen before. So I feel like I didn't do much. I feel like everybody in the city just did what they could. A lot of it was just staying out of the way and not driving and not getting in first responders' way. But I had a day where I fundraised for the Pasadena Humane Society. So in a couple hours, I don't have a lot of followers on Instagram, right? I was like a normal person.
Hmm.
But we raised like $1,500 in a couple of hours. And that's just from friends and family, and we bought a bunch of supplies and dropped that off to the Humane Society. And it was insane to see what they had there. I mean, there must have been hundreds of people dropping off supplies that I think they've distributed that to people who've lost homes. They've taken some of it to help the animals that they've taken in because they were the main hub for the Eaton fire. So they were like driving there. I mean, you could smell it. Like the air they were so close to the Pasadena fires. But yeah, just so much love from the community to help them. And then I was volunteering over at Pierce College where they took in a bunch of evacuees from the Palisades fire. at one point, I shouldn't try to guess how many horses they had. At least 50 at some point that they taken in for evacuation purposes. Might have been more, just from what I saw. But yeah, so just really basic like mucking stalls, feeding them, just checking on them, make sure horses aren't what they call colicking, so stress induced, where they get intestinal blockage. I'm just making sure that while people aren't there that are evacuated from their homes and trying to figure out maybe where they're going to live or when they can go back, like they know that their horses are being taken care of, with the volunteers and the animal control officers as well. I mean, the animal control was working literally, like they had 24-hour shifts there for over a month. I mean, they were
Mm.
exhausted by the end of it. I think I was with their last shift last Wednesday night because I think everybody went home Thursday and they were like drained. They were so tired. But I don't think there was a single casualty for equines in Los Angeles. People really care about their horses here because there's a lot of backyard barns here that people don't realize how much livestock's in like Burbank alone, Burbank Rancho. There's people who just have horses like in their backyards. And Burbank's like, 10 minutes down the road from me. So I think people just don't realize how much livestock is in Los Angeles and the surrounding area, but everyone really banded together and yeah, and helped out all the animals. That was nice.
Well, that's awesome. That's awesome what you did. It's awesome what you've done with this film. It really resonates with me. Like I said, I appreciate people giving a voice to people who don't have a platform sometimes, and I think this is
Yeah.
going to be a great story, and it's going to be educational. We have a lot of equestrians out here. We have
Yeah.
Coachella's at the Polo Grounds, so obviously
Yeah.
we have a lot of horse owners. So I think they're going to enjoy this film as well. Is there anything else I missed, or anything else you want to promote?
No, that was pretty thorough. I'm just really excited. This is such a prestigious festival, to be invited to, and as a, first time director for documentaries. I mean, I feel like I'm going to like hang out with the big kids, like oh the big leagues, like I can't wait to meet the other filmmakers and just see the high caliber, films that you guys have and network, such a well-known doc festival. So we're just super honored to, to be chosen to play there and I've already connected with a few filmmakers on Instagram, as people start posting, like, oh, I got in, you start following people. Looks like some great projects. So yeah, just really excited to meet you in person and, to come see all the films.
Well, we're excited to have you, and we're excited for your film. Again, the American Documentary and Animation Film Festival is March 27th through 31st at the Palm Springs Cultural Center. Michelle, thank you so much. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people tuning into your film. I'm going to try to make it there, depending schedule permit.
Sure.
I got to run all over the place, but
I know you guys have a lot going on.
yeah, but this is on my list. I think it's going to be fantastic. But thank you for taking the time, and thank you for everything that you did for the community during the fires,
Sure.
and for doing your film and giving the voice. Appreciate you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for giving us a platform. I appreciate it.